Hey y'all, I am kind of tired. I just made a bunch of other videos, but I don't care. I'm going to keep making more videos. It's time for my annual favorite books that I read in 2020 list. And it's not just books that came out in 2020, but from any year. Maybe I called it Best Books 2020 because people want a title that's easy to understand. Anyways, I'm just looking at my Goodreads list for 2020, and I'm going to talk briefly or not so briefly about the ones I liked that got either 4 or 5 stars. Nothing below that. So let's begin. The year began with me rereading one of my favorite graphic novels, The Filth, by Grant Morrison and Chris Weston. It is pretty great still. I think I've read it at least 3 times now, and I like it more every time. All right. I gave that 4 stars. Not a lot of, wow, a lot of 2 and 3 star books. Okay, it looks like I didn't have another 4 or 5 star book until February, and that was with another graphic novel, Benjamin Marra. He's the legendary Benjamin Marra. His graphic novel, Terror Assaulter, One Man War on Terror. I read that and enjoyed it. It is like the worst aspects of 1990s comics, like the worst Image comics, like Shadowhawk and stuff like that, and then coupled with like I don't know, his influences are like 80s, a lot of 80s, like kind of cop movies and things like that. Anyways, it's wonderful. I love it. It's bizarre. All right, next book I had, wow, a lot of graphic novels are the only thing that are making it. And now I'm in March. Wow. So, anyways, March I read this adaptation of Moby Dick by the author. I think this is the first thing I've read by him. I think he illustrated and did the adaptation. His name's Christophe Chaboute. I think he's pretty well known. But I don't remember where he's from. France? I don't know. Somebody can correct me. But anyways, I'm just saying I enjoyed it, and I went on to read another book by him this year. Yeah, The Park Bench. I didn't care for that one quite as much. I think I liked Moby Dick because to me it seemed like the Good Parts version of Moby Dick's. Like it's much shorter. You can read it in a much shorter time, and it gets to the meat of the story. Not to disparage Herman Melville. All right, next book. Wow, it's all been graphic novels so far. So the next 4 star book I have is, I've mentioned these before, the Carl Barks, Donald Duck, and Uncle Scrooge books are insanely good. Oh, they're pretty good. And The Pixelated Parrot was the one I read next. I've enjoyed all those, and yeah, that series is wonderful. If you haven't read those. If you haven't read Carl Barks comics, you're missing so much. All right, next book, an actual non-graphic novel. This was an audiobook I listened to by Alex Ross, the first book I've read by him. And the title is The Rest is Noise. I spit on my lip. The Rest is Noise. This is a great book if you're interested in music, if you want to think about music in different ways. It's the kind of book, I kind of wish I had an audiobook to it, and I'd like to go back and read it because it's the kind of book, as you read it, you want to stop every time there's music and find a video about it or listen to a few hours of it before you continue. But Alex Ross's writing is wonderful. Check it out. Next book called another audiobooks by Stanislaus Dehaene. I mentioned this book, actually I did a review of it, so I'll link to that video. I guess I'll link to the videos down below for any of the books that I talked about in videos. So the book I read by Stanislaus Dehaene was How We Learn, Why Brains Learn Better Than Any Machine, ... for now. And it was good, but I read another better book about the mind that I'll mention soon that I recommend even more if you're interested in the brain and all that jazz. Another Carl Barks book I read, Walt Disney's Donald Duck, Terror of the Beagle Boys. Another wonderful book. Next 4 star book I see on here, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 4, The Tempest. I briefly mentioned this in my Ulysses series. It's the final book in that series of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is taken, I think it started in 1998, I want to say. And I was there from the beginning, and I've pretty much followed along all the way. And I've read several of the volumes several times. This one's pretty good. I think the first 2 volumes are the best, but I enjoyed this one. It does things, and it was just like going in, reading a new Alan Moore book, or the last comic supposedly by him, was knowing that, we're never going to have quite this experience again without rereading old books, of course. But supposedly he's probably still continuing to write, I imagine, just not comics. I guess maybe prose from now on. But I haven't heard anything. The only thing I've heard about coming out from Alan Moore that I am really excited about is that I think it's called The Moon and Serpent Bumper Book of Magic, if I got the title right. But that's been, they've been forecasting that for years, and it still hasn't happened. So I don't know when it's going to finish. But if it ever does, I'll read it. All right, next book. I'm in July now, so we're already halfway through the year. I did talk about this a lot, and this book I loved. This was the fourth book in the series, Bad Gateway. I talk about that whole series. I'll link in below for Megahex and all those other comics by Simon Hanselman. Wonderful, wonderful. One of my favorite discoveries from this year. If you want my comic suggestion for this year, I think that's it. I mean, that and Carl Barks, if you didn't know about Carl Barks. Then I listened to an audiobook I kind of enjoyed by Pema Chodron. Did I say her name? Pema Chodron. I'm not sure if I've actually read or listened to anything else before by her, but this was called Be Grateful to Everyone, an in-depth guide to the practice of Lojong. Lojong, am I saying that right? I didn't really know anything about Lojong, so I'm just gonna throw that out as a teaser. If you don't know what it is, you can listen to her book. It's actually not a book. It was like a retreat that they just recorded, so you can hear the audience, and there's interactions from the audience. But still, it's good. And then Megahex, I read that. I think I gave all the Simon Hanselman books pretty good ratings. The Man Without Talent, graphic novel by Yoshihiro Tsuge. I did a review of that, I believe, with the Jenga. Let's see what else. One kind of, I don't normally talk about books that don't make the 4-star cut, but I'm going to mention, because I kind of mentioned it before, is that a graphic novel that I was looking forward to a lot, Glass Town, The Imaginary World of the Brontes by Isabel Greenberg. I only gave it 3 stars, and not because I hated it, but because I just felt like I wasn't quite as with it as I had been with her previous 2 graphic novels, which I loved. But this, perhaps it's because I don't know the juvenile writings of the Bronte family. I've read, like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, but I don't know any of the juvenilia, and there's a lot. So like maybe if I went back and read that, and then I went back to Isabel Greenberg's graphic novel, Glass Town, I would enjoy it more. But just on its own, it just didn't quite work for me, and I was never quite, there with it. All right, moving on. Where did I leave off? Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. This, again, I audiobooked it. This was about fungi, mushrooms, and related things like that. It is pretty incredible. One of my favorite science books for this year. Another Yoshihiro Tsuge book, The Swamp, I enjoyed. I think I included that in my other review. Megan Mogg in Amsterdam, One More Year, wonderful Simon Hanselman books. That Beethoven biography I did a review for, very good book if you're interested in Beethoven. I listened to an audiobook by John McWhorter, who I guess is pretty well known in linguistic circles, but I'd never read or seen anything by him, and I enjoyed it. He reads it, or it's actually like, it's those teaching company lectures where they have like the fake clapping and stuff, but I enjoyed it. He has a very, he's very good with language, I guess you could say. It shouldn't be too surprising. I guess he studies language. So I talked about this book before, How to Write One Song by Jeff Tweedy. If you're interested in songwriting, very good book. That I did a review of Livewired, 4-star. That's my other, I mentioned brain science and things like that, pop science. That book is my choice, I guess, my nonfiction. Well, no, I think the Beethoven is pretty good. There are some other choices too, but for science, that's probably actually the fungi book is good too. There are some great books this year, I thought, that I found. Yeah, but Livewired and Tangled Life were both wonderful. Okay, and then I read The Western Lands by William Burroughs, which I've read a lot of Burroughs when I was younger, I guess, since about, yeah, I started when I was like about 20. I've read most of his books, but I haven't read the final trilogy that he did. I don't know what the trilogy's called, but the three books are The Cities of the Red Knight, the order, Cities of the Red Knight, The Place of Dead Roads, and The Western Lands. I think that's the order, but I decided, because I had the copy of The Western Lands, and I wanted to read some Burroughs. It'd been a long time. I was like, that'd be an interesting voice to think about. So I had this copy, even though it's technically the third book in the trilogy. You know, I've read the other cut-up trilogy with Soft Machine, Ticket That Exploded, and Nova Express. I don't know, like calling them any kind of continuity is really, I think it's just marketing, because like they're just writings, and like you can package them how you want. It's just Burroughs, and you can pretty much start anywhere and read anywhere. It's all over the place. And then I guess my final favorite 4-star or 5-star book for 2020 was also a book I talked about. The book was Junji Ito's Cat Diary, Yon and Mu. That was a lot of good graphic novels, huh? And a lot of some good nonfiction. I didn't read a lot of novels. I don't know if I read any novels. Did I? Did I read any novels this year? That's a fascinating question. Oh, I read The End of Eternity. I only gave that 3 stars though. I read Aura, Carlos Fuentes. By the way, I'm not talking about the 4 or 5 stars anymore, so we're out of that territory. That moment has ended. I read A Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe. Did not care for that. I feel like I'm lurching into books that I didn't like, but I feel like I should mention this one because this was the coronavirus year, and so I thought, oh, cool, I'll read a coronavirus, a theme book for plague. So I read A Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe. Did not like it. It's hard to even say if it's a novel. It's not really a novel. It reads like a journal, but so it's kind of boring and dry. But it is fiction because Defoe. I mean, yeah. So it's fiction, but did not care for. Other novels. This is just me at this point. Curious if I read any other novels. So I guess I only read like 2 novels. I read actually the very first book this year that I finished, The Blazing World and Other Writings by Margaret Cavendish. That ties into League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, that storyline, and I didn't care for that enough. That was kind of a novella. Anyways, I'm done. We've reached the end of this video, and I have another video to shoot after this. But anyways, I'm excited about all the books I'm going to read in 2021. One of the big ones that I'm going to read, actually, I finished Ulysses. How did I not mention that? I finished my Ulysses course last year, and I think 2021 is the year that I'm really going to try to tackle Finnegan's Wake, which I've read parts of before, and I've read summaries, and I still don't feel like I understand it anywhere near the way I understand Ulysses. I am planning to do, or I'm thinking about doing a Finnegan's Wake course in the future, probably several years in the future. But I think one of my reading goals next year is to finish Finnegan's Wake cover to cover, or at least once, and maybe read 1 or 2 of the other books about Finnegan's Wake so I can really just start to understand it better. Other than that, I'm going to keep my other reading choices secret for now, and I'll see you in 2021.